This is Henry Chamberlain. Welcome to another Comics Grinder. I've got Matt MacFarland. He's a cartoonist who's been around for 10 years or so, and just a great steady progress. I'm really impressed. I have been keeping an eye on his work since Dark Pants began, and it's an ongoing series. And his latest book is Cookies and Herb, published by Fieldmouse Press. Thanks, Matt, for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
So yeah, you're part of the group of cartoonists who've appeared before. So I guess there's an advantage in that. There's this feeling that we've broken the ice, I hope, by this time.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like you said, I think you found my first issue of Dark Pants when Meltdown was still around,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which I was just talking to a friend about how much we miss it. But yeah, I think, and then you reached out to me, so I think that's the first time we chatted.
So when I discovered for myself Dark Pants, where were you in the comics ecosystem? Did you feel like you were still trying to prove yourself, or that was by, I think it was issue 3 by that time. I can't remember. 2014.
Yeah, I might have had three out. I started 2013 with Dark Pants, and I think by it was issue 3 was probably around 2016 or so. I tried to do one a year, um, and then I slowed down considerably, which we'll get into. But yeah, I kind of just started. I committed completely at that point to making comics because previously I went to Otis for grad school. I was painting and drawing, and I got into like because well, it was like it's mostly like conceptual program there, so I kind of branched out into different media, did some video, sculpture, etc. But yeah, I mean, cartooning is always my first love. I was doing it throughout the whole time I was at Otis. Even I was trying to incorporate like cartoon imagery into my work. But yeah, it was a very practical decision, and my son was born 20, now I'm forgetting, 2013, and so I just said I need to just stick to comics. It's a way I can be creative. It's a way I can kind of keep my expenses down, and it
Yeah.
is the thing I'm most passionate about too. So I'm not spending like a crazy amount of money on materials to build these giant sculptures, and it was a very practical decision, but one that I'm pretty happy that I made.
Well, I'm thrilled to just chat with you. I'm pretending like we're in a coffee shop. Maybe someday we'll be in a coffee shop and be able to dissect things, dismantle things even further. But let's give it a try right now. So you have this wonderful fine arts background, which a lot of people would kill for, and or maybe not. I don't know. Maybe from another generation where I really value the fine arts background, doing the critiques and going through the whole. Well, I make it to junior block. Well, I make it to senior block. All that stuff. The competitiveness of it. The well, it's supposed to. It's a very unique experience where you're there to. It's almost like a reality TV show. It's. I'm being facetious a bit, but there are elements to that because the odd man out people are the ones that the professor doesn't really find very interesting. And that happens. There's always the superstar, the golden child, and everyone's trying to emulate that person. Or why is that person so? I don't think that person's art's that great. I'm sure you relate to all that I'm blabbering about right now.
Yeah, I think in some respects that's accurate. I do question sometimes, like, was it worth the financial strain and everything? Like would I still have ended up where I am? But I don't think that's true because I do value like the kind of the opportunity to work in different media, and I think the most valuable thing about those 2 years was that was the critique process. So getting feedback from instructors and peers to kind of figure out what you're trying to say and how best to say it. So I mean, I've definitely like incorporated a lot of that into my cartooning. I think post grad school, which was 2003, a long time ago, is when I graduated. But yeah,
Well,
so
like
it was helpful.
yes, I would definitely say it's very helpful. Like everything in life, there's the pros and the cons to it. But what you get out of it is a discipline, I think, for lack of a better word, because I'm just looking at your art on display behind you, and I dare say that might be something going back to your studio art, your art, working in a studio with art students that, or the way artists look at a work, they need to have it all out because it's you know the whole process of it being a whole process. Well, I can't think of the term now. All over, wasn't that what we painters would say? An all over process. You can't just
Hmm.
fixate on one part of the painting. It has to be an all over process. But there's all of these basic, that seem like basic little nuggets, but they're so valuable. Once you've lived it, that's what's great about going to art schools. You live these theories. You're actually there. Oh, that's what it means. I really do need to look at the whole painting. I can't just look at one section of it. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah. I think it really forced me to look, like you said, at like all steps in the process from conception to exhibition. And yeah, it's something I'm always thinking about in everything I'm doing. I've definitely scaled back in terms of like, so just a little bit about this. This is like Dark Pants 5 in progress, and it's been in progress for like 7 years now, because it has a sculptural element to it. So these elements are made out of paper clay,
Wow.
and so they kind of feel of a piece with the wooden panel when they dry, because they have kind of a wooden uh, kind of look to them and then feel as well. But I mean, I gave that, that's definitely came out of grad school, is like giving myself another challenge,
Yeah.
something to keep my like mind engaged, but at the same time it sort of functioned like an obstacle, because of how busy and complicated my life is now, with like, having a family and everything, and jobs, etc. It's hard to sit down at the table and actually do that. And I've started working just on my trusty iPad these days.
Great. Me too.
Yeah, because I just like I know it's not exactly the same. Like I do my best to kind of emulate traditional materials when I'm drawing and make it look, as close to analog art as possible. But it's just like about removing all the obstacles and barriers to creativity at this point in my life. And
Yeah.
if I can do that, then I'm more likely to work. It kind of keeps the momentum going. So that's what
Well,
I like about it.
I was a fairly early adopter to the iPad Procreate combination 2019. That's pretty early on when it's all
Hmm.
started to take off. And I swear that once you've been drawing on an iPad long enough, it is like the hand drawn process. There is you have brought in that element into it, so it becomes you become one with the iPad Procreate mechanism you're working with. But I blend them together. I love to draw everything from pencil and pencil, then ink it, then scan it, and then sometimes I'll do something digital just with the stylus and. It's gotten to the point where it is all blending together. I do want it to become more time efficient. So that's one thing that I keep thinking, well, maybe it's going to save me time, but in a lot of ways, you're going to be invested time wise almost equal, hand drawn or on an iPad. It all takes time. Does that resonate with you? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I kind of jettison some of the setup and cleanup part of it, which
yeah,
so I can
that's
get right
true.
down to business in a lot of ways. I shout out to my friend Alec Longstreth, who says make comics every day. So I try to live by that. Try to make comics every day, even if it's just like 15 minutes at night, or sometimes sometimes it's 2 hours, but yeah, I have a sweet spot. Like when the kids go to bed, I can work at night. So that's when I break out the iPad.
There you go. Well, I'll show you my notes. So usually I have at least 2 pages of notes, and this
Yeah,
time
that looks
I
like
yeah,
that looks
this
like my notes when I was in school, just like filled with doodles. I like it.
well this time I drew your latest post on
That's
Instagram,
good. Yeah.
and it's like graphic recording it because you need those anchor points. So I thought, well, if I just draw all of his characters or many of his characters, I won't forget any of them. And I'm not familiar with a couple of these guys. There's this one guy. It's like a ghosty character waving.
There's some
It's
deep cuts. Yeah, there's some deep cuts. Like some that you have to go really deep into my Instagram, or some that don't exist at all. And there, so the ghosty guy is the ombudsman, and there was like maybe a year I was doing these kind of gag cartoons with him, and I don't really know what the angle was, but he was just kind of a clueless but very like innocent type of character that just like bad things happen to. Um, so I'm sure he was some sort of alter ego, I guess. And then there's one that's the sheepish walrus that I just used to draw in college, but I don't think I've drawn in probably 25 years or so. Again, kind of these like I don't know, these like punching bag characters I like a lot that like are failures and kind of like uh, are intimidated by every aspect of the world and life.
now
So
when you decided to make a commitment or focus more of your energy in comics, was Dark Pants the first project, or were some of these other projects also were you working on them as well, or
yeah, I was in grad school. I was kind of documenting the critique process. Like I would focus on funny conversations, interactions that would come, or even some of the artwork that I encountered in grad school, to the delight and dismay of different peers of mine. And then those were just called art school exploits or something. And then I was also doing gag cartoons because it was like a way to kind of let off some steam because it did feel like a very high pressure situation. Like I don't necessarily like being in the spotlight or put on the spot, and when you're showing your own work, so it can be a little nerve wracking, especially when like 20 of your friends and classmates are sitting there kind of judging it. So, I was doing, some series like painting series or whatever, and then I was also just doing these stupid, silly gag cartoons that just made me laugh. So I compiled all those into a book. I think like a couple years after I graduated, maybe 2005 or six. But yeah, the first time I was like committing to a series and like a concept was Dark Pants. And like I said, that it was just a silly idea of like, what if there are these like kind of um, these mysterious, ambiguously preternatural pair of pants that would kind of affect the wearer in kind of interesting ways. Um,
yeah,
that
exactly.
was the idea. And then I
Yeah.
just kind of I wanted it to be like a different character from a different background, but also like featuring different neighborhoods in LA in each issue. So they're kind of self-contained, like an anthology series, self-contained stories in some ways.
Well, people are still discovering dark pants every day. There's a new batch of people. Give us an elevator pitch on that. These pants are cursed.
They're cursed, and actually, this issue I'm working on right now is all about the origin of the dark pants. So if you're wondering, if you
Okay.
if you've read Dark Pants, you're wondering like where do they come from? Well, this will answer some of those questions anyway. But yeah, it kind of came out of like elevator pitch. That's like I'm not good at those, but basically, it's a mysterious pair of pants. The protagonist of the issue finds them, puts them on. It functions. They function as a catalyst for change. Usually, there's like a sexual component, so they like maybe indulge in things that they wouldn't typically. And then they come out on the other side, yeah, completely changed. And I like to think I am. I think it's a hopeful series. I think they come out changed for the better. Like it might have like un. They kind of helped unstick them in some ways from whatever rut they were in.
Hmm.
So that's I think about the Dark Pants positively in that light. But yeah, it's kind of like a noir. I call it comic noir because I do want it to be funny. I want there to be funny scenes, but I also am like leaning into this kind of like black and white, stark contrast, kind of mysterious aesthetic.
Yeah, the pants give the person a supernatural power or charge, confidence, supernatural confidence.
Yeah,
They,
confidence is a big thing. Yeah, for
and
sure.
it's always these very interesting, multi-layered characters. So you delve deep into their psyche, what's eating at them. So
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
I think that's what I'm always drawn to in comics is character, and so they are mostly I would say character studies. So it focuses on this one character and kind of maybe a 1 to 2 week period of their life. Yeah,
now I think the next project you really got into was scenes from a marriage. Is that right? Or
yeah. Post Dark Pants. Well, I mean, I'm still doing Dark Pants, but yeah, I think definitely Scenes from a Marriage was a pandemic project. Close quarters with my wife. I needed some kind of creative outlet, some way to like kind of see the comedic side of what was happening.
hmm.
But obviously, it was a very dark and upsetting time for many of us. But yeah, so I just started making these gag cartoons, and I think we talked about it last time. But uh, for some reason, I like invented a collaborator, Steve Chrome, and he didn't actually exist. And I think it was a way to kind of like investigate or interrogate the kind of conventional 4 panel gag comic format.
Hmm.
So kind of like embracing it, but also subverting it, or hoping to subvert it in some ways. Um, but eventually, it just became like I wanted to tell the like make the funniest, craft the funniest joke visually, and so that's kind of and it was always obviously informed by whatever was happening in my specific marriage conversations. Or I think my wife and I are pretty different people in some ways, so I always had a lot of content fodder for those strips.
Well, I haven't looked at them in a while, but I think I remember one thing about that comic strip and other things you've done is that you find the obvious stuff that people are thinking about that they think, oh, that's too obvious. No one would ever do a comic about that, or like a pet peeve, like something you recently did where you're in the airport and the guy's telling you, well, just tap your card. And that behavior is very annoying. But then you flip it around and you say, well, wait a minute, let's be honorable and let's be noble. This person's working a minimum wage job, and I would have just I wouldn't I don't know that I can be noble sometimes in these situations,
Mm.
especially with the TSA folks who I know have a really tough job, but it's not everybody. It's the bad apples. Let's put it that way. The bad apples who they have a little piece of power and they might not use it correctly. Is so I'm sure you would agree with me on some level.
Yeah, I think I have a uh, I kind of always like think everything's my fault, and maybe that's because I don't know. Maybe that speaks to uh, how self-absorbed I am, I guess. But I think I always come back to like, well, it maybe wasn't all their fault. Maybe I responded in a way that was not great or something. So
There's that.
I try to be accountable in some ways. I think for things that happen. Um, yeah, there's like a big brawl at my son's basketball game the other day, and like the parents were involved, and I was kind of trying to like justify why people were acting the way they were, which I don't know if it was possible, but there's usually a reason why people are acting in a less than, like you said, noble manner.
Yeah.
So I try to be somewhat sympathetic and empathetic when I can be.
No, yeah, that is the when your better angels to come around and help you. That is the right way to go, of course. But Man, oh, another one I can't place where that came from, but there's one where you really are pissed off that somebody calls you boss. Hey, boss. And I think there's a power dynamic there. Maybe I'm that's not the right way to look at it, but I think when somebody, if I was like being a delivery person and I had somebody else who I thought, hey, this guy's got a nice house and they've got it made, I'll just say the boss thing and bring them
Mhm.
down a notch.
Yeah, it feels very like pointed and somewhat disingenuous when people say it. I think it's not my favorite way to be referred to. But yeah, I think it is a little bit of that. There's a little bit of like, I may be doing this, but I'm better than you in some ways, and
Yeah,
maybe they're right. I
exactly.
don't know, but
Maybe they're
yeah.
right. Yeah. No, the other one, this is more recent. I don't know. There's scenes from marriage. Did OK Cryptid come after that, or was that something else?
Yeah, okay, Cryptid. It's funny. It's kind of like an extension of Dark Pants in a lot of ways. Um, a lot of the material I think that informed Dark Pants and OK Cryptid came out of um, personal experiences around dating, like online dating. That was happened a long time ago, but I'd say back in like 2010.
Hmm.
But there's a sort of idea that like I felt stuck and then I became unstuck, and so it's kind of like the circumstances that led to that. Um, and yeah, so but I wanted to. There is so much embarrassing content that I felt like it needed to be removed from my actual experiences, and it doesn't mean that there's not some things in there that happened, but I definitely took a lot of liberty in terms of like fictionalizing characters and even situations, um, just to make it hopefully make it a better story. And I've had
I
that
see that.
freedom and leeway because it wasn't obviously strictly autobiographical.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was always like I always conceived of it as a series. So again, sort of like Dark Pants, like sure you could see that, read the first issue and be like, oh well, this is like obviously based on your experiences, but then I want there to be different characters featured in each issue. So the one I'm working on now is inspired by someone I know pretty well and care about, and their experiences in the dating world. So it's kind of nice to have that even, another step removed from my own life.
Yeah.
It's just more satisfying in a lot of ways. Like I don't have to feel that, I don't know, shame, I guess, around that, and then also I just really like the character. Like I'm just really drawn to this character, and I want them to I want them to win. So
Well, that
it's
makes
been
a lot
fun.
of sense. It helps to freshen things up and see it from a different point of view or a different angle. I'm trying to think of if there are examples of Crumb doing that because maybe he got tired of always being the center of attention. There must be some examples. I can't think of one at the moment.
I think he was pretty okay just featuring himself in all those comics. Well, I mean, obviously he has like the Fritz the Cat and some of the he created characters as well that were
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
heavily influenced by his own life and himself. But I
yeah,
definitely have that feeling when I like do an autobiographical comic. I'm like, I want to do something completely different. I definitely get sick of myself or like revisiting past experiences. So I kind of like alternate between, I guess, fiction and autobio.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was thinking just now, I don't know if this really fits, but Bill Griffith will do that. He'll insert himself just the right amount directly into his comic. The latest book, I'm still reading it right now, is all about him and his family, his grandfather in particular. And so, of course, he's part of it, but very judiciously inserts when he inserts himself directly. It's very judicious. 'Cause I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure he gets tired or gets like, I don't want to be too much of me in it.
Yeah, yeah, I could see. I don't know if you've seen Comic Book Confidential, the documentary, but I always think about his segment. He just feels very. You just get this sense that he's very uncomfortable in his own skin. He doesn't really like being the center of attention, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. He's he's a brilliant and very sweet person. So more power to him.
I
Um,
love his book about his mom. I think that's the last one I read, which is very autobiographical. I don't know, I forgot what it was called, but his mom was like a very kind of magnetic, gregarious personality, and so
yeah.
it's all about her. Yeah,
Well, yeah, she was in an affair with a cartoonist,
right.
and I don't recall all the details, but let's well, let's say something about your comics as that your childhood comics. Are there some before you did Cookies and Herb, or is Cookies and Herb the first real all about you as a child or boy growing up?
That's a good question. I think I definitely did like I, it might be my first foray into like actual childhood comics. I think maybe I always had a block around it because I feel like those can be kind of like inherently nostalgic, even if I don't know. So I definitely had an awareness about that. I don't think I'm necessarily a nostalgic person, but I think when you're revisiting time periods and you're kind of talking about everything that's happening in that time period and the fashion and the you know cultural touch points and all that, it can kind of get to that area.
Well, I guess.
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, that's fine. I mean, I just was like, I had to include all that stuff, but I also didn't want it to feel like um, overly sentimental, I guess, around about that time period.
Well, now that I think about it, maybe you're building up to it by little little references to yourself as a young person, like your pamphlet or my troublesome relationship with R. Crumb. You're in there as a kid, so you're testing the waters there a little bit, and then Seasons of Gary.
Hmm.
There's that one, so for sure there's that. So
Thank you for bringing this up because it's like I just had a blank about like, oh, yeah, I feel like I've done comics about being a kid, but yeah, they're definitely in my troubles with Crumb, especially like when I discovered Crumb way too young, and, and and kind of set me on my path, I guess. And then yeah, more seasons of Gary is all about my relationship with my dad. So a lot of anecdotes about going on family trips and just like our dynamic together when I was a kid and a very sensitive kid, and he was this kind of like larger than life, um, somewhat I don't know what the word is. He had a lot of broke, and he's a very funny guy, and he liked to be the center of attention. So just kind of the friction that's created between those two personality types.
yeah, well, yeah, I remember him being like a man's man.
I mean, in a sense, yeah, he definitely was more sensitive than I think he let on, but he definitely came from a specific era. He's definitely a boomer. No shade to boomers, but I mean, he definitely kind of um embodied kind of the stereotypes, I guess, around that. And he just he he was very, I don't know, he could be insensitive at times because he had kind of these conventional perspectives on things, and then you know uh, I was very sensitive and very inclusive, I think, and so I didn't like some of the things he would say about groups of people, for example.
Hmm.
Yeah, so but he in essence he was a very funny fellow, and I obviously loved him very much, but we had some fights and we had some tension, and so yeah, just kind of a reflection on our whole relationship
Oh,
and showing appreciation, honoring. I think a lot of these are just about honoring these people in my lives who had huge impacts, like Herb and my dad, and even
yeah.
Crumb, obviously the parasocial relationship, but as an artist, the impact that he had on me as an artist.
Well, and I'll try to throw up some JPEGs so people can have a better look when they view the video. Of course, you can just listen to it as well. But tell us something about Cookies and Her, the process that how it came about from the first idea. I'm going to do this book to it getting picked up by Fieldmouse. What can you
Yeah,
tell us?
I uh, I think a lot of my projects, there's some kind of hook that's kind of motivates me as the impetus to kind of start digging in, like something as silly as like a mysterious pair of supernatural pants, or just feelings around like Crumb, or my dad passed, so I was like starting reflecting a lot on that. And this one I didn't really have a hook, and I was just kind of like sometimes I just start making things and I don't really know why, and the reflection obviously comes later. But there was something about getting older and thinking about being a father, and having these thinking about these mentors in my life that meant so much to me, and really had a huge effect on who I am, or at least I try to be as a human being, I guess. And so, Herb, this neighbor Herb was that for me when I was a kid. He was like kind of a surrogate grandfather, I guess, in some ways. But yeah, I didn't really know where I was going with it. I didn't know if I had a hook. I sort of had this alternating narrative going where I was talking about my childhood, but then I was kind of, you know, zooming forward into present day and like being a father and all that, being a teacher. And I submitted like the first 12 pages, and Fieldmouse was like, well, we really like the colors. We really like the sequences when you're a child. We don't really like this other storyline as much. It's just not as compelling. And for some reason, like I had no issues with that. I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like I wasn't attached to it at all. I feel like it kind of was freed me up in some ways. It's like, oh, I can just focus on this, you know, period in my life when I was like 3 to 8 mostly. And then obviously there kind of jumps ahead when I'm reminiscing about him later in the book. But yeah, it was great. And that is the first time I worked with an editor, Rob Clow, who's I think pretty well known and respected in the comics world, with Field Mouse, and everybody there is awesome. There's an intern. I don't know if she's still there, Nora Klaus, who really helped me with the technical stuff of the book, like the text specifically, like why don't you upload a digital aims guide so your text is better? I was like, oh, okay, I never thought about that. And yeah, just compositional stuff. And yeah, Alex Hoffman is Field Mouse was great in helping the project come to light. So yeah, it was just a really positive experience. It kind of made me feel like it was something that I was craving after grad school, like having a peer group giving you feedback on your work to try to make it the best possible thing it could be.
Well, that's
So yeah,
great.
it was about a year. I want to say a year, maybe a little over a year of actually making it, and then took about a year and a half for it to come out.
Well, it sounds like the ideal situation for a creator and editor where the creator generally is at a certain point in the work, and the editor generally is providing the helpful, very helpful, useful feedback.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't really know what to expect, and I think they were kind of taken aback that how well I took the criticisms because they're like, because I have that in my background. I know what that scenario was like, and that no one, unless they're bad actors or something, they all want what's best for you. They want you to make the best version of your work. So
Yeah.
just having that in the back of my head helps.
Yeah. If you can form a level of trust, if the trust is there, then that's great. Because then you can get something, you can accomplish something. Because I think even well-intentioned people might give out criticism for the sake of criticism, and then like it's not helping. What do I do with this? But anyway, you sound like you were on the right track the whole way with it. I
Yeah, and I didn't, I pushed back on some things, but most things
Yeah.
they were pretty right about. If there didn't like align with something I was trying to say or vision, then I'd say, well, I really, and they were totally open to that too. But so it's a
Well,
nice back and forth.
it's a conversation. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I got to the point where I thought, well, maybe it's easier for everybody if I just do the whole book from start to finish and just suffer through the peaks and valleys and figure these things out on my own. And that's how I got my book published. Um, and I don't know, it's definitely a path. It's not the only path, but it's something to consider. If you're really committed, why don't you try doing the whole book? And maybe it's not going to be the final book, but maybe it will be, because sometimes that's what the editors are looking for. Does this add up? And when they can see a whole book all done, and I now I see why this is happening at this point in the story, and oh, he comes back and he resolves it later, and oh, that's very satisfying, etc.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like, I mean, that's how I usually would do books because I would be self-publishing, right? So I just kind of do it all myself in a vacuum and then release it. So this is novel in that like I'd meet them it was like once a month. It wasn't that often really. And then they'd have notes for all my pages and I'd go back and revise them, and it makes it a lot easier when you're working on the iPad too, the revision part.
Oh yeah, well yeah, definitely. So
My computer's about to die, so I just want to, I don't know, you
oh,
might want to cut out on the actual video here, but I'm just gonna plug it in real quick so it doesn't
sure.
go out on you.
Well, before I
Um,
forget, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about Dark Pants. I'm
yeah.
curious to maybe delve a little deeper into the connection between the fine art background and the comics, because the comics background, because there's all this overlap, and a lot of cartoonists they either instinctively or they learned it from other artists. They take on treating comics the way you would treat painting or some other art form that has like a long tradition. That there's just a certain way you do things, like mapping it out and being able to see the whole work the way you have it displayed on your wall there. Um, I'm curious, for one thing, you have this sculptural element in your work, so you won't be able to scan the pages the way you would traditionally do it. I'm assuming you've already thought, well, it's going to be great. I'm going to photograph them. So you've got some methodology in mind to pursue with that.
Yeah, I definitely, when I was working on it, I had a way to photograph them. So I'd have like a light at a specific angle so you could really see the three dimensionality of it. But I've also always hoped and anticipated that they would be in a gallery setting. So you could also experience them that way. You could walk around and see them. And I've had some opportunities to show them. I just showed one panel, I think, a couple of months ago at the Armory in Pasadena, and then I have a opportunity coming up in April where I get to show like a sequence. So yeah, people get to kind of interface with them in person, which is nice. Yeah,
Well,
but then
that's
again, I
great.
want it to be a book too. Yeah, so I want it to be both. I want it to be like experienced this way and then also in a book. So because it has a story that I think I want to be read like it almost like a traditional comic, but just with maybe untraditional materials.
Well, yeah, you just said that about the light. I hadn't thought of that. You could cast it in a certain way where you actually lean into the fact it's sculptural, and so you there's little shadows cast in certain spots.
Yeah, and there were moments, there were pages, specific pages where I would change the orientation of the light because it just felt like it needed it. But for the most part, I kind of kept it pretty consistent. And then sometimes for dramatic effect, I'd shift the light. But yeah,
And
it was fun.
if you need to go back, you're like whatever point you are in the book, and you say, "Oh, wait a minute, this page, this one panel, that has to completely be redone." You can easily redo it. You're open to editing things if they need to be edited, or are you at the point
Um,
where they're done and
I
done,
mean,
and
when I'm doing it this way, it's kind of like there's no way to really edit them. Like I obviously on the iPad, it's much easier. But I'm kind of just
yeah.
there's a surrender that comes with working in this way. You're just like, this is done, this is it, and I'm not gonna mess with it. I went back and like looked at it because I haven't looked in a while, and I feel like the story works pretty well. I mean, the text, I feel like I've come a long way in terms of like the handwritten text, but it is what it is.
No, it looks
Yeah,
great
so
from here.
Yeah, I have like 60 pages, 60 plus pages done. It's going to be 80 plus pages. So I'm really not that far from the end. It's just gotta sit down and do it.
So it's going to be an 80-page episode.
Yeah. Yeah, for some reason like all my books end up being about 80 pages and it's not conscious or intentional really, it's just how they end up being. But
Well, that's a satisfying number, close to 100 pages. That's nice.
yeah, I do envy like some artists who can do these like 300, 400 page epic graphic novels, but it just seems like that's not, I don't know. It could happen at some point, but it's just I let the story obviously dictate the
Right,
length.
right.
So that's how long they've been.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you just a few more questions about the fine art comics connection. Like you had a group show not too long ago at the I've never been to the pop shop. I'll have to stop in there. What can you tell us about that? In October, you had one, two, three, four, five, six other cartoonists, comic artists. How did that go? What was that all about?
Yeah, I think I used to, yeah, I definitely used to organize readings more regularly when I was first getting started. I think it was again just a way to kind of work up some momentum and excitement around what I was doing and like have a way to connect with people, potential audience. But yeah, I hadn't done that in a long time. So I think I wanted to do some kind of reading around Cookies and Herb and the release of that. So I reached out to Pop Hop in Highland Park, and they put on really great events. They're very like comics friendly, zine friendly. They have a huge zine library and local creators. And I've been, it's changed hands over the years, but I was doing readings as far back as like 2015 there, I believe 2016. So we have a history, we have a relationship. And then I was like got the opportunity to recruit some of my favorite local and not so local cartoonists. So I think I've been craving like a comics community for a long time because I came out of the fine art world, so I have some amazing friends in that world. But then there's not much of an overlap with the comics community.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's now I feel like I'm starting to kind of connect with people, and we have a support group, and we see each other at fests and stuff. So anyway, it was like let's see if I can remember all the artists. Andrew Greenstone, who's another Rust Belt review person. Sam Grinberg is, if you know his stuff, it's kind of all over. He works on The Simpsons, and Scumburbia is his project. Mary Shine, who just came out with an amazing book, um, You and Me on Repeat.
Right.
Um, she's a friend, and Chiquita Dinayanti. I met. She does these amazing zines, hand drawn zines. I met her at the Pomona Print and Art Fair, I believe. Um, I feel like who am I missing there?
Stacy Sue.
Stacy, who actually it was awesome. She went to Art Center, which is where I teach. I didn't actually have her in my class, but she was also releasing a book through Fieldmouse Press. So luckily she was local. She lives around Pasadena, and her book is really amazing. Which I'd have to look up because it's a long title, but something about roots, hearts and roots. And her book has a really kind of novel approach. It's very poetic and beautifully drawn. The illustrations are really amazing. Is that everybody? Did I say everybody?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, good. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. It was really felt like the old times. Great turnout. People came out for it. People bought books. Um, I'd like to do it again at some point. I just have to have an excuse. It was a lot of work too, organizing it, but definitely paid off.
Now, I can become a little bit too meticulous in my notes. If I had the time, I would have color coded this. It's just to make it easier for my eye to go from one place to the next. So I was looking over my notes. What am I missing? So I'll just read off. These were the points I wanted to make for whatever we might want to say, the art, fine art, comic art overlap, and the art process, uh, taking the work seriously. Because I think some comic artists get a little cocky sometimes, and they go, "Well, I just woke out of bed and I scrawled some stick figures and that's it. I'm going to post it, and that's how I'm feeling today. I That's valid, but that's not the only way. So I mean, you have to take your work seriously, and then working with a theme, working with in a series. Those are definitely fine art strategies. But it's just a very universal thing. It carries over to different art forms too, of course. So I'm just saying that I think you're in a very strong position. I thought you came out of the gate fully formed with dark pants, and so
I
you
appreciate
just
that.
gotten better and better. You're like the grand old man. You're not old, but you're like the grand old man among a lot of
I'm
cartoonists
getting
at
there.
this point.
Yeah, I do think I don't know. I look back at those old dark pants and I cringe a little bit, but I do think like what has stayed consistent is that like respect for the premise and the concept, like having hopefully having a strong idea, and then that's what is propelling me forward through all these projects. Um, yeah, I kind of did it backwards. I started with that, and a lot of cartoonists I think get their start with submitting stories for anthologies or things like that. So I did it backwards. I started submitting anthologies like later in my career, like with Rust Belt Review and some other ones. Sliced was another one. Milk and Honey. But that was a fun. It's like a partnership too, and then you're working like not directly but indirectly with these other artists.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun.
Well, you're coming from a position of strength, I guess, for lack of a better word. Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with Rust Belt Review? Because you've got a nice, impressive contribution with your OK Crypted character, the Yeti who's looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yeah. Yeah, I reached out. I'm always like looking for. I think actually Fieldmouse Press or Soul Rad, who's affiliated with Fieldmouse Press, did a feature on Rust Belt Review, who's published by Sean Knickerbocker out of Minneapolis, and yeah, I think he was maybe on like issue 2 or 3, and so I like looked into, does this accept submissions? I really like Sean's work, and I liked a lot of the work that I saw in those issues. And so yeah, it was an open submission thing, and I think I submitted like a story about COVID, and he was like, I don't really want to talk about COVID right yet, but um, I like your style and I like what you're doing if you have anything else. And so I came up with a story that was very directly based on my when I was a waiter up north, uh, like kind of in between, like during summers, like in between high school and college. And there's this really dysfunctional Italian restaurant that I had a lot of stories from. I was like, oh, I want to turn these into comics. So I changed names and I changed the name of the restaurant and all that, but that was fun. And I got some good like I don't know, I guess feedback, and also like there's some cachet I think that came with being affiliated with Rust Belt Review. And then yeah, then I started submitting the OK Cryptid stories since then. So that's kind of what I've done. And he just seems to keep publishing me. And like I don't really have like I kind of just send him stuff, and then I don't know if it's gonna go or not, and then it just ends up in the next issue, and so
That's
it's
perfect.
easy that way.
A very natural process. That's the best kind.
Yeah, no editing at all.
But you never know what interesting work will appear. And it's an impressive anthology because I know they hold to really high standards. And you mentioned one of your collaborators for the reading, Andrew Greenstone, is now on my radar. I have never seen Sid the Cat. I'm kind of have to get a copy of that one way or another.
Yeah, he's a talent. I got to hang out with him last weekend because we drove up to the SLO Comics and Art Fest, their inaugural one. Yeah, he's a great guy, and I'm blown away by his talent. His style is so unique and distinct, and he just like has a real knack for telling a story. So yeah, I definitely saw it like when I saw Andrew Greenstone's work in there. I was like, oh wow, this is legit.
Well, I will wrap things up. Is there something that I missed that you wanted me to mention, or anything that comes to mind of what you're working on next, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always working on something. So again, I have the ongoing. I mean, this I should be working on this, but I'm not right now. I'll get back to it. But I'm still working on issue 2 of OK Crypted, which is about a different character, a different cryptid's experiences dating. It's actually about so the first one was about a Sasquatch. This one's about a Yeti, a female Yeti. Um, and that's been fun. I'm probably like 30 to 40 pages in now. Probably be 60 to 80 pages. And then I had kind of this horrible thing happen that in retrospect is I can see the humor in it, but my family went on a snow trip last winter slash spring. It was the end of March, last weekend of the season. Went up to Big Bear. We all, except for my daughter, got severely injured. So my son was the first to fall when he was trying to snowboard. Never hadn't really snowboarded before. Broke both his wrists.
Oh,
My wife tore her ACL, which she'd done to her other knee previously a couple of years before, and then I broke my clavicle. I was all on the slopes. Um, so I just thought it was so absurd. I was like, I have to make. I think my friend was like, "Oh, you could at least you can make a comic about it, right?" And so I was like, "Oh yeah." There's a lot of. I mean, it is kind of dark and it's depressing in some ways, but it's. I'm hopefully trying to find the humor in it, and we're all recovered and fine now. So that's kind of the other project that I'm working on and trying to find the right tone for it
yeah.
is kind of the struggle.
If people go to your Instagram, they can find. I think you did like one of these Christmas or holiday newsletters where you break down all the broken bones that occurred.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kind of an offshoot of that project. Um, so yeah, it's interesting because it's pretty fresh still. So I think that's the challenge is like how do you talk about something autobiographical if it's you're still kind of dealing with it or working through the aftermath of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna let you go, and unless there's something else, I'm sure you've got some conventions that you're planning to attend. Or that's
They're coming up, but I haven't. Yeah, I think the like submissions are going to open soon for like the big ones, SPX and Cake and all those. So I haven't applied to those yet, but I might just try to stick around California this year. We'll see.
yeah. You just it's always enticing to try. Sometimes you feel like I'm gonna hit them all, but you can't. You're only human.
Yeah, it's just like financially, I don't know if I can justify doing that. I did SPX the last 2 years, which was awesome. I did CXC 2 years ago, which was great. Cake is a great show, but it's like I
Yeah.
can't keep doing that every year. I got to pick and choose to be more selective, I guess.
Okay, Matt. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me.
Thanks, Henry. Appreciate it.